Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is not an announcement, this is the official opening of the inaugural SABPP. Do you want to sing first? Well, this is the official opening of the inaugural SABPP Celebrating Diversity Conference. So thank you so much, every single person in this room. We're glad that you have joined us. These events will not be possible unless it is to sponsors, and I think it's appropriate that we start off the proceedings by thanking our sponsors, Anglo-American, for their kind contribution to making sure that today is a reality and actually happens. Progressive Transformation Consultants and JM Busa Investment Group. Thank you so much. So if we could just give a big round of applause to all our sponsors. We really appreciate your contribution and keep the check ready for next year. Thank you. And our partners, Upstage Productions, Siaka Consulting, Tool of Greatness, and then Saint Watson for his agenda advice and everything that he's put in. Saying thank you very much. Really kindly appreciate the effort you've put in. So a big round of applause to all of our partners as well. Thank you very much. I want to say also a very big thank you to the brainchild, Black Bark Productions. This is where Alistair Swart and Laura Barker, very interesting. This is husband and wife, but they choose to have different surnames. Very confusing, but after a long discussion with Laura, I finally realized maybe it's the best thing to do that because at least, every so often when they want to, they can just keep their identity as well. So our diversity is our strength. So thank you so much for Black Bark Productions for having made this possible, also coming up and forming this wonderful initiative. So thank you so much to be able to see the innovative approaches that was taken by you, the South African companies, in terms of the world of diversity and the progress that we have made as a nation as far as diversity, our diversity is concerned. So ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll move over to our very first speaker for the day. He will be focusing on the legislation which cannot be ignored, and also responding to employment equity, regulation updates and so forth. That is CEO of South African Board for People Practices, that's SABPP, Marius Meyer. Would you please join us on stage? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashwin, and welcome to all of you. I have a confession to make. I've got makeup on. In the true spirit of diversity, I've got makeup on, but not because of you, because I've been on the TV show this morning, Morning Live, where I've launched the National HR Standards, and I'm going to share with you as well. You can just imagine what my little daughter will say tonight. I said, Daddy, do you have makeup on? What's wrong with you? I'll say to her, this is about diversity. We need to kill the stereotypes that people have about gender and race and disability and all other things around diversity. But before I start there, I just want to acknowledge our chairperson who's also here, Sabriwe. Where is he? Sabriwe Moya, can you quickly stand? Can you quickly stand? That my audience can see. Thank you so much, Sabriwe. Thank you for being here. And then our previous chairperson was also nice to come here, Elizabeth Lamini Kumana. Can you please stand up? The lady in pink. Thank you for also joining us on this very special event where we really want to celebrate diversity. When we discussed the issue of diversity with Laura probably 6 months back, she came to me and she said to me, but for decades we've stopped to talk about the whole issue of diversity, and then we decided that I think it's time to have a conference like this where people can talk about the importance of diversity. Some people thought 1994, new president, democracy, all of that, 1995, all our diversity problems would be gone. Okay, unfortunately, we were all those who believe that were wrong, because we are still dealing and grappling with important issues of diversity. But today we're starting this process of showing you some solutions regarding the whole issue of diversity and how we can manage it very effectively. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some ideas around optimizing diversity in achieving employment equity. And you are most welcome to follow us there on Twitter as well. As you see the Twitter at SABPP1. Can you just put up your hands? How many of you are on Twitter? Only 39. The rest of you? Okay. It's like my little girl who said to me a while back, she said, Daddy, I think you must get an iPad. I said to her, I said to Nadia, Daddy does not need an iPad. She said, Daddy, if you want to be cool, you get an iPad. So Daddy thought, I want to be cool. I got an iPad, just one problem, I didn't know how to use this thing. And now my little 9-year-old daughter is teaching me how to use the iPad. And I think this is also what diversity is all about. That we really start to embrace what diversity is. We really utilize the talents of the people that we have here. Yesterday on Twitter I saw a girl in India, she's 13 years old, starting with a master's degree. 13 years old, isn't that beautiful? And that is the talent that we get in this world, and what we also get here in South Africa, that I believe we must utilize for the benefit of our companies. Previous one. I think life and work, it's all about diversity. The one thing we will never escape is diversity. From the moment you are born to the day you are dying, everything you do is about diversity. Every single experience, every single person you meet, every meeting you have, every job you have to do, somewhere there is the notion of diversity that's embedded in the work that we do as HR and other practitioners. And when we did our rebranding 2 years back, we said to ourselves, yes, we are going to set HR standards, and part of the diversity work we're sharing with you today is about that. But it's also about diversity, and that's why our new logo there also epitomizes what diversity is all about. It's the 4 race groups that we have here in South Africa. It's also about the 4 pillars of the HR profession regarding ethics and professionalism, and the quality of the HR work that we do, the duty to society that we have to really get this country right. But ultimately, what we talk about today is about setting HR standards. And I'm very proud to announce that we have started the process of creating a diversity and equity standard for South Africa as well. And all of you who are here today are most welcome to join us on that particular journey to create these standards. My central question to you today is, do you really value diversity? Do we see diversity as a strength that can be utilized? Or do we see it, like our previous governments in the 80s and 70s, do we see diversity as a problem? And somehow I think we have not yet optimized this wonderful thing, diversity, that can really help and leverage and improve the quality of the work that we do in South Africa. Just imagine if every single employee in your company can achieve his optimum potential, can deliver his best for your organization, your profits will double. But currently, I think there are so many people that have got negative feelings, or people who don't feel valued, and that is what we have to change if we really want to get diversity right. Now, a central theme of what I want to discuss with you today, and I said to Ashwin, I don't even want to talk about the legislation because the legislation is fantastic. South Africa has the best employment equity laws in the whole world. And why do I want to say that? I don't know, because the law is best. It has been mirrored on the Canadian and the UK employment equity model, and we have generated the best piece of employment equity legislation. There's nothing wrong with the law. The law does not need to change. What is wrong is the quality of the practices underpinning and supporting the application of the law. So over the last 20 years, it's not the law that has failed. It is us as HR managers and CEOs of companies that have failed with the implementation of employment equity. And that is what we need to get right. Part of the problem is the fact that HR people do not always have the right competencies to drive professional HR practices. And therefore I want to share with you the new South African HR competency model that we've developed in the true spirit of diversity. We have not copied and pasted from New York. It is something that we've developed here in all 9 provinces among our local South African HR managers. We've developed this model ourselves. We want to show the world how we have developed this particular model. And what we're saying about this model is it really starts with the pillars of the HR profession, which is your HR and business knowledge, is our duty to society. Our duty to society is what diversity and transformation and skills development and equity is really all about. Marikana is a failure of the duty to society. Whether it's the companies themselves, or whether it's the environment, the socio-economic situation, it was a failure of the duty to society. And that's what we need to get right as HR professionals, to say, how do we fulfill our duty to society in order to transform our companies? Ethics is very important. When it comes to diversity, I can tell you I know of more than one HR manager who's cooking the books with the CEO of his companies in order to score BEE points, in order to get tenders. Those things need to stop. As HR professionals, we need to change that. We need to be the ethical champions to say the true figures are represented in our employment equity reports and our BEE scorecards. Professionalism is how we need to behave, to educate and teach our CEOs to really understand what diversity and professionalism is really all about. In the middle of our model, and this will help us, is our leadership and personal credibility, our organization capability, how do we create solutions, how do we implement solutions, of course equity and employment equity is part of that diversity, our interpersonal communication skills, how do we really create citizens for the future in terms of driving innovation, technology and sustainability of our organizations on it. At the strategic level, the 5 HR capabilities is about strategy, how good are our strategies, our talent management, and you can't implement proper diversity and equity if you don't have a good talent management system in place. How do we govern our HR functions, look at the people risk in the organization, how do we comply to all the laws, and of course our BEE and employment equity laws are part of that. How do we do analytics and measurements as far as the HR function is concerned? How do we implement service delivery when it comes to the application of proper HR services? So there, the South African HR competency model is there for us to utilize, to embrace, to build HR professionalism. If we don't get HR professionalism right, there will be another 20 years and we will still sit with exactly the same employment equity figures. Employment equity is a wonderful opportunity for us to really embrace true diversity and to help us to achieve the type of targets that we should be achieving when it comes to the quality of the HR work. Does it look South African to you? Okay. Does it look African? Okay, good. And it's not only the flag that's doing it, it's about the richness of the HR work that we do in South Africa and the diversity of our nation that really helps us to be able to put this homegrown solution ready for our HR community. Now, our own contribution to employment equity in recent times are the following things. Our position paper on employment equity has been delivered in Parliament to the Labour Committee in Parliament. If you want to have a copy of that, just speak to Jarrell or Kenneth at the back and they'll gladly help you. In that position paper, we did an in-depth analysis of the Employment Equity Act, of the gaps in the employment equity system. But in essence, we are very supportive of employment equity law. There's just a few issues that I will outline for you right at the end that we feel that needs to get some attention. Then we also delivered for you a fact sheet on employment equity. It gives you all the major statutes, also there at the back with Kenneth. If he runs out of copies, he will gladly email this also to you as a free gift for you for today in the spirit of diversity. That fact sheet gives you all the facts in terms of the progress that has been made in employment equity over the last 10 years and still where the gaps are. We've made fantastic progress in the issue of gender equity. It can still improve, but the major studies are showing that South Africa is between either the worst case study says we are number 17 in the world when it comes to gender equity in senior management position, and the best statistic says we are number 5 in the world. So I don't know which one to believe. Be that as it may, we're in the top 20 in the world when it comes to gender equity in top management positions. Okay, so as far as gender is concerned, we have definitely made good progress, but of course more progress needs to happen, especially in certain companies. Disability, we have failed. A lot of work still needs to happen when it comes to disability work, really the empowerment of disabled people. And of course on the race issue, we have failed as well. The employment equity stats clearly show we've made either little or no progress over the last 20 years as far as employment equity is concerned nationally. Yes, admittedly, a lot of you have achieved successes in your organizations and you need to be congratulated for that. But from a national perspective, we definitely need to make more progress as far as employment equity is concerned. We also developed a fact sheet on the National Development Plan. We were the first professional body to have ready for Minister Trevor Manuel a fact sheet that tells you exactly how HR should implement the National Development Plan. So we are ready for 2030. A lot of work needs to happen still, but in the true spirit of diversity and transformation, there is a model ready for implementing the National Development Plan. You're also most welcome to get a copy of that one there at the back from Kenya. We also produced our annual Women Empowerment report over the last 3 years, and we will, if you're interested, we can gladly provide you with a free copy of that one as well. Because I'm in a good mood today, just giving away free copies. let's continue in that particular spirit. We've submitted this work to Parliament, so in the Parliament they are currently considering some of the recommendations we have made on your behalf and the HR profession in South Africa. In terms of our own staff profile, I always say you can't preach things if you don't practice it yourself. So we've made fantastic progress over the last 2 years. And our own profile, our staff profile, 70% black. Our member profile has changed from 40% to 60% black in only 19 months. Our board profile is now 70% black. That's also a 20% increase over the last 18 months. Our HR internships, 99% black, so they'll be really bringing in a young cadre of talented young people from the universities who can now enter the HR market. Gender profile also doing quite well in that particular one. Then very important, and this one is the good news about this is there is a disability qualification in South Africa, and we are the accreditation body for the certificate in disability, but sadly there's no uptake in the country. So my appeal to you today, why don't you get people to become involved in diversity qualifications? Why are all the training providers not embracing this disability qualification that is there and that we can gladly do the quality assurance for you, having been recognized as the accreditation body for the disability qualification? I would really like to see next year we come back here to see that there are at least 1,000 people involved on the disability qualification that is there, that just needs to be utilized as far as the uptake is concerned. And lastly, and probably most importantly, we are busy developing the first national diversity management standards, which is, of course, will be part of the national HR standards, not professional practice standards that we are now creating for the HR profession in South Africa. And you are most welcome to join those work groups if you want to become part of the national diversity management standard. What is the role of HR? I think what we see is HR professionals are the implementers of employment equity legislation. So the laws are there, but we are the people who make it happen on a daily basis. It is our duty to society to transform our organization. And if we don't achieve that, we have failed our duty to society. The law is not the problem. The organization culture and the enabling HR practices are absolutely key to help us to transform our organization. Lastly, professional HR workers are needed to achieve employment equity. Simply playing a numbers game or cooking the books or putting people in positions and just think overnight your figures are right, that's not going to help. We need proper enabling HR practices like mentoring and coaching systems, like proper induction programs, like graduate bursary schemes, development programs that will really help us to get to the right level of employment equity in our organizations. Now the current reality, as you can see from the statistics that we've seen in the fact sheet, is there's a clear lack of progress when it comes to employment equity, and that needs to change. And we need to be the change agents that will make that happen. Admittedly, our slow economic growth is an obstacle. It does not really help us because we can't create more positions in the current economic environment. So that is the obstacle that's slowing down employment equity. The current analysis of the statistics is inadequate, and we are in contact with the Commission of Employment Equity to also assist Louisa Mbabane, who is currently driving this process, the Directorate, to do a more thorough analysis of the current statistics so that we can really pinpoint what the real problems are. And I'm going to tell you today there's a misfit in terms of where the emphasis needs to be, and I'm going to end off with that. You can really see where you can focus on if you really want to get employment equity right. The intentions or the spirit of the Employment Equity Act were very good, and it is an excellent piece of legislation that's just fully implemented. And that's our duty to society to ensure that the Employment Equity Act and the BEE codes are implemented effectively. Admittedly as well, there are broader socioeconomic obstacles. The education system does not produce the type of school leavers and graduates that the economy really needs. And that definitely has a negative impact on the employment equity, although we cannot use that as an excuse forever for not appointing people in the position and not providing development opportunities for people to move up in organizations. Now, the Employment Equity Act identified key requirements for the effective implementation of employment equity, and it's as clear as mud what we need to do to really make employment equity work. And so if we just read the Act properly and implement the codes of good practice, we should not experience too many problems when it comes to the proper implementation of employment equity. I think we see these problems on a daily basis in the way that we do HR work. Companies are struggling to meet employment equity targets. There are skill shortages in certain areas that you can't simply replace one person with another person. So it is a challenge, but the development and the investment in skills development is therefore so important for us to really get this right. Do you remember in 1999 when we were all sitting in meetings all over the world preparing for Y2K? Remember those days? Okay, some of you were too young to remember that, but there are a few people here who do remember that. And we were sitting in meetings from 1996 till 31st December 1999 to prepare for Y2K because we were told that the sun would not rise on the 1st of January 2000. Do you remember that? So when the fireworks went off and all of that, we said to ourselves, but this, there, the sun is rising again. Okay. All that effort for 5 years we prepared for Y2K and life just goes by. Just imagine if we had that same level of energy and investment in skills development, in employment equity, we will be able to change our organization and change this country in terms of addressing unemployment, poverty, and inequality that are the major obstacles to our economic growth in South Africa. So yes, admittedly, there's still inadequate transfer of skills in some companies. There's a high labor turnover in certain organizations. We're struggling sometimes to retain the staff that we really need to retain. And let's be honest with ourselves. There are companies that still use window dressing and they use tokenism. If we implement real employment equity and diversity, we should not allow these things to happen in our organizations. Organization culture needs to nurture an environment and culture that's conducive to diversity. And then a very ugly thing that has arisen over the last 10 years, I think, is xenophobia. Isn't that sad? If we want to be the leaders in Africa and the world when it comes to equity and diversity, that we are not treating our brothers and sisters from other countries, and in particular other African countries, the way that we should be treated. Look what's happening in Port Elizabeth now with the Somalia shops and places like that. We must always realize, that's why I get so upset when people say, oh, I'm just going for a meeting to Africa. I want to say to them, but you are in Africa. On Thursday, I'm going to Zambia. I'm not going to Africa. I am in Africa. But we need to change the way that we treat our African brothers and sisters internally in the country, yes, but also throughout the continent. The contribution that the African Union is making should just be accelerated. The contribution that we should make is continuity. What do we really know about Botswana except the lions and the elephants? What do we really know about Namibia and Lesotho and Swaziland and Malawi and Egypt and all these places except the elephants and the lions? We need to change. We need to embrace the African culture as true professionals in the way that we think about ourselves as citizens, not only of South Africa, but of Africa. So xenophobia is something we need to address, especially if we want to know about us. I hear stories about South African companies in the Middle East and Eastern Europe and other places who always have this attitude, now we come from Sandton and we try to open a branch in Budapest. And we will tell you in Budapest how you do business from our good experience in Sandton. Will that work? Will the people in Budapest appreciate our attitude if that is how we try to almost create a new system of colonization in other parts of the world? We need to change it. We need to be honest. We need integrity. And we need to treat people from other nations also the way that we want to be. And having said that, intercultural communication problems and conflict still occurs on a daily basis in South African companies. And we need to address them. We need to face them. And we need to create a type of environment and culture where those things are not allowed. The dimension of diversity, I think these are the things you see on a daily basis. We focus a lot of emphasis on race, gender, and disability. I think the other aspects of diversity we need to focus on as well. There are issues in all of our organizations. Marital status. I mean, the other day I said to my little girl, you have to do mathematics because, I mean, I get preached every time. So if you don't have mathematics, you won't get anywhere in life. So I said to her, listen, mathematics, show me how much progress have you made with mathematics. And she turned around to my wife and she said to her, why did you marry this guy? So I think this is what diversity is also about in terms of our marital status and the perceptions that we have, sexual orientation, culture, age. and to other issues. Because even personality brings a whole notion of diversity to the fore. And these things, I don't think we've leveraged the power of these things in our organization, because those are the full dimensions of diversity that we all need to feel and really apply in our company. So are you satisfied with your employment equity profile? This is just one example of a typical South African company, not only in Cape Town, but in other parts of South Africa as well. They say we're not placing enough emphasis on diversity. I think this is the challenge. Who are the influence in your organization? What are those issues that we need to face and we need to address if we really want to get diversity and employment equity right in our organizations? So what we have developed over the last 3 months is the first global HR national standards model, and this is what I've launched on Morning Live this morning. It is National Human Resource Management Standards for South Africa. Okay. And we are the first country in the world that has this. So once again, as South Africans, we have managed to put in place something where the rest of the world can come and learn from us. Zimbabwe is the next country. The next country that will implement this is Zimbabwe. On Thursday, I'm launching this in Zambia. I'm getting inquiries from all over the world, Australia, United States, Kenya, Ghana, Namibia, Botswana. People who say we need this if we really want to get the people's side of our business right. So we've developed 30 national HR standards. It starts with strategic human resource management, talent management, and HR risk management. It also includes the HR architecture around our workforce planning, recruitment selection, learning and development, performance management, reward, wellness, employment relations management, OD, HR service delivery, HR technology, and lastly, and this is where we always fail, as we have failed with employment equity, is HR measurement. The numbers game. How good are we with the numbers to really ensure that we can show the bottom line impact of HR organization? And we need to do proper planning, implementation, review, and improvement if we want to get this right, based on the competency model that I've really shown. Now, what is the beauty of this first global HR system standards model that we developed with 468 HR managers here in South Africa is the fact that diversity and employment equity spans across all those 13 building blocks. And thanks to Rose and others who have given us comments from SASL, we have integrated diversity in most of these elements, but we're also going to create a separate professional practice standard for diversity management and for employment equity to ensure that it does not get watered down or hidden somewhere between all these standards. So once again, we want to lead the world there by putting in place a proper standard for diversity so all of us can get on the same page when it comes to the application of the standard. So if any of you are interested to speak to Kenneth about the file, if you want to see how the bigger HR management system works, you're most welcome to liaise with Kenneth and he will help you there at the back. Now what we need to get right is really to say how we want to add value to our business in terms of individual and understanding individual differences, because as we sit here today, we are 167 different individuals with different ideas, different backgrounds, different feelings, different behaviors. But we also need to be able to use our teams more effectively with their diverse skills and with their talents if we really want to be effective. But ultimately, we're not joining organizations for the fun of it. We need to help organizations to be effective in their diverse markets. So understanding the market and diversity in the market that you operate is so important. And that may require some adaptation according to cultural norms and values. It may also require cross-border adaptation. Now, surely MTN in South Africa, with the wonderful gender equity policy, is not applying that gender equity policy exactly the same they would apply in a place like Syria or Afghanistan. Am I right? So you need to be able to refocus and look at the application of your diversity system according to the needs of the markets where you're operating. And typically, if you look at an OD approach to diversity, it starts with your awareness, you do a proper analysis, you formulate your employment equity and plan, your management plan, you implement it and you measure it. And that continuous process is what we need to implement. Not the 1 year cycle to keep the Department of Labour happy with the employment equity report. That's a once-off thing that you do once a year. This is a continuous process over a period of a year and longer, where you implement certain interventions to make employment equity and diversity work. And that's why it's so critical to have this proper policy and plan in place that we really implement employment equity and diversity effectively in our organizations. Okay, I just want to end with a few guidelines for equity management that I'm sure you'll pick up in the rest of the conversations here today. I think open communication is absolutely key. There's nothing to hide about diversity. These days, it's so open, your annual reports, we can see exactly what your employment equity profiles are. If I open any of your websites, I can see what your employment equity is. There's nothing to hide. Open communication is critical. But why not can I see what goes on in your organization if your own employees don't always know these things? It's the open communication and transparency around these practices that's so important. Creating an environment where diversity is respected and appreciated. Really openly discourage and punish racist, sexist, and other discriminatory behavior in organizations. It should not be allowed. Initiate diversity workshops and seminars. We've had a lot of these things in the 80s, and then we thought, now democracy 1994, we can now leave the diversity workshops. Those workshops, unfortunately, need to come back. We have not learned enough about the importance of employment equity and diversity. Integrate your employment equity with your skills planning, with your overall HRD strategy. Without skills development, employment equity will not work. Integrate your equity management in all your HR functions. It's not only recruitment who has to bring in the right numbers. It's the continuous development along the HR value chain that will help you to get employment equity right. Implement diversity-focused mentoring and coaching programs. It's a huge opportunity for that. I think we can work a lot harder at that. We need to reflect diversity in the products and the other media that we use from a branding and marketing perspective in our companies. We have to analyze the equity profile of your market. You can't implement diversity if you only look at it from an HR perspective. You actually need to get your customer profile and say to what extent do we align our diversity from an HR perspective to what our marketing and product people are telling us who our real customer is about, and how do we design interventions to meet those particular market needs. I think we need to follow the Employment Equity Code of Good Practice of the Department of Labour. It's a fantastic document that really helps us to get diversity right. There's no excuse that we can come up with for not implementing diversity effectively. Integrate employment equity with BEE as well as the industry charters that are there. Yes, they keep on changing it, but that's why if your employment equity plans are good, it doesn't matter if they change your industry charters. It's a continuous pursuit of ensuring that we strive towards meeting our equity targets. And of course, continuously evaluate and monitor how we are doing with equity. So I think those guidelines you'll find useful, and perhaps you can reassess the current work that you're busy with. The question I pose to you is, have we moved beyond lip service? Because I still see there is some lip service. The company enthusiastically supports diversity. Sometimes we like to call things different names in South Africa. If your employment equity thing is not working, then you call it equal opportunity. If equal opportunity is not working, then we call it, let's call it diversity transformation. And we think that our line management and our employees will be impressed by just giving things different names. I don't care what you call it, as long as we achieve the results of all these wonderful programs. That at the end we are focused on the outputs and the results of these interventions. Lastly, some of your equity terms, I will just run through this very quickly. How diverse is your workforce? How open are your leaders for diversity and equity? I'm not talking about HR, because HR people in general are quite open to these things, because we are the people. My question is your top management teams, your CEOs, your boards. How open are they? Are they leaders and real drivers when it comes to the application of diversity and equity? How well do you manage your diverse customer profile? How do you experience diversity and equity problems, and how do you deal with these problems? Do you sweep it under the carpet and hope it will just disappear, or are you really facing and dealing with it in a proactive and professional way? Do you have a proper equity management plan for your organization? Is your diversity management integrated with your employment equity, or is it two separate processes? On the one hand, you run workshops, on the other hand, you're chasing the law. To what extent have you aligned, integrated, and created synergy in the way that you implement employment equity and diversity? Have you facilitated diversity management training sessions? I think those things need to come back, and we really need to focus on the broader definition of what diversity can really do. Do you follow a change management approach to equity management? And not a once-off approach, but a continuous change management approach to ensure that you really have proper alignment and integration. How often do you evaluate your equity management practices, and how do you do that to ensure that your company improves on these diversity challenges? Okay. Is this your employment equity profile? Hopefully not. And I know people like Ashwin and others know how it feels to be the only diverse person in a big team. The challenge is for us to say we need to get these equity profiles right. Can you imagine one day, 10, 20 years maybe from now, we have like South African sports team and it's exactly diverse? By the way, when are we getting white players in Bafana? We need to get diversity right. And I see even in the public sector, there are certain organizations that have now started to put in the diversity in the advertisement. We are asking for colored, Indian, white employees to apply. Have you seen that? Like I think it's the Department of Agriculture or one of the other government departments. That shows you they've started to meet and exceed employment equity targets. So there, I think the public sector is leading us, that the private people can also look at and say, how do we affect these particular changes? Okay, the last ones I'll run very quickly. Implement the case of good practice on equity. Have you integrated your equity with your skills plan? Do you have progressive people management practices, such as talent management and mentoring that will drive your equity? Do you manage to retain your designated employees, or do they simply come in and leave the organization immediately? Is the culture conducive to them? To what extent have you integrated employment equity and BEE? If I look at the way some companies implement BEE, especially certain people sitting on hundreds of boards, I get the feeling that BEE actually stands for Black Elite Enrichment. I hope that's not what it means in your organization, that it's really about economic empowerment of the people who should benefit from BEE deals and not the same people who sit on hundreds of boards. Have you created an organization culture conducive to employment equity? And do you follow an integrated approach to employment equity? Okay, lastly, just 4 recommendations. While we agree fully with the spirit of employment equity acts, there's just 4 things that I think we need to focus on if we want to get things right. And that is, I know the government wants to bring in a system where they want to really become much harder in terms of challenging employers, but we believe that employers must be grouped in 3 groups. You're either good at employment equity, in other words, you do achieve your targets, or you make good progress, or you are non-compliant. And you probably, through adversity today, you probably fall in one of those 3. I think we must really group those employees and start encouraging the good people and give them awards and stuff that the rest can see. These companies are doing very well. And yes, let's punish the non-compliant. But let's also help them and build a system where they can really see how they can benefit from employment equity. Now, the biggest flaw in the way that we looked at employment equity over the last 20 years was the fact that we neglected the professional level. Because the emphasis was on the top management level. And yes, certain boards have changed and top management teams have changed, but too slowly. We believe there's no other way that you will change employment equity if you don't get the professional level right. Out of chartered accountants, if there's only 2,000 out of 18,000 chartered accountants that are black, you will never change top management teams. End of the story. Because engineers and accountants sit on boards and become top managers. Therefore, our priority should be on really getting the professional level right, because those professionals eventually become top managers. We can't simply keep on with this window dressing at the top if we don't get the professional levels right. Collection, analysis, and reporting on employment equity data needs to be improved. There's good stats there, but I think a more rigorous approach is needed to really ensure that we analyze and look at different professions and clusters of data before we make decisions about employment equity. And lastly, but very importantly, the competency level of our HR professionals is very important. We will not change employment equity if our HR people are not more assertive in terms of driving employment equity effectively. If you cannot stand up to the MD and the CEO of a company and say, sir, we are, or madam, we are failing, in most cases it's sir, we are failing in our employment equity because you guys are not leading the way that you should be leading. You guys are not showing the example. If you can't face your MD, that's that, and straight in the face and say to him, you need to change. Then little change will happen. And that's the level of business partnering and assertiveness, credible activists, the way we call it, that we really need if we want to make a change. And improvement in the current approach to employment. Okay, no one says it better than Nelson Mandela, who said that, I'm just quoting from the middle, they believe that South Africa belongs to all who live united in our diversity. I don't think we're there yet. We've made progress. A lot of work still needs to happen, but at least as the professionals here, and it's wonderful to see a very great diverse group here, we are the change agents. We are the people who need to make this happen in South Africa with our companies. Thank you very much. I hope you will enjoy the rest of this event. It's a fantastic opportunity for you to share and get ideas from your peers on how you can implement. Let us celebrate this diversity and learn more about the effective implementation of diversity in our organizations. Enjoy the event and let's change these profiles that we that we don't keep on whining about the same problem continuously, but we really make a major contribution to create truly South African companies that are representative of all the groups we have in society. Thank you very much.